Right. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tony Pignagrande. I'm the executive chef for the River campus here. Welcome to our first episode of the live stream cooking series. So today, the focus was how to create some meals out of Hillside. So all the ingredients here are from Hillside. I went there yesterday. There's no secret ingredients. I wanted to make two easy and practical dishes. Really focus on vegan, focus on a meat dish, but ultimately I also wanted to focus on Rochester area and try to get as many ingredients that I could that were local. So as we go through this, I'll hit some of those local ingredients, but again, ask questions. I like to keep my food simple. So here we go. So two dishes. One is going to be, I'm a pasta guy, so I had to make pasta. I'm going to do spaghetti bolognese. I'm going to play around with a jarred sauce, but I also have some really cool pestos that we can throw in there. And I'm going to do a noodle bowl. I'm going to do a carrot ginger, mushroom ginger bowl. Sorry, that was loud. And with some tofu. This dish, the noodle bowl, will be gluten-free. It'll be vegan, but it'll have a lot of flavor. So let's get started here. So I wanted to get started first with the broth. So I throw my gloves on. First one, the ingredient was harvest carrot ginger sipping soup. So how do we build flavor quickly, but how do we build flavor? I think flavor can come two quick ways. It's always kind of your sauce and broth. So I'm going to throw some dried mushrooms into just some water. Let that go. I'm also going to take the onion and I'm going to use it for both dishes. First, I'm going to take half of it. I'm just going to rough chop it. I'm going to throw it into that water with the dried mushrooms. I'm also going to take some ginger. It has been washed. Just going to kind of smush it up a little bit, help get some of that flavor out of there. I'm going to throw that into the water as well. So I'm really just taking the ingredients from this canned soup and really trying to just fortify it all up. I don't have carrots. There weren't carrots at Hillside, but we do have onions, we do have mushrooms, we do have ginger. And I'm going to take the top off. I'm going to let that broth go a little bit, and then I'm going to add this ginger soup in there. Next, I want to get the bolognese started. So in the saute pan, and again, I really wanted to keep this to 2 burners, if possible, even sometimes 1. I know a lot of folks, whether you're in a dorm or a small apartment, make it easy. 1 pot is always better. So I get a pan on medium heat. I'm going to throw a little oil in there. I started this off by talking about local. Local is important to me. I think local is important to a lot of folks. We've always wanted to support the surrounding community, but I also think local, especially this time of year, has incredible flavors. So I'm going to have, this is Autumn Harvest Farm, Romulus, New York, about 45 minutes from here. Actually visited this farm multiple times, and this beef is fantastic. With them, it's pretty cool to see how much this family, and it's a family-run farm, treat their animals and how much love they have and respect for the animals. So for me, it starts with the product. It could be beef, it could be an onion, it could be anything, but it's how it's treated. We'll ultimately get your best product. So I'm just going to throw this meat in the pan, medium heat, and let that start going. We want to get a nice brown color on it. As that meat's going, I'm going to dice up the onion. And again, all these products were at the Hillside Pod. There's a lot of different ways you can go. Pasta for me is extremely easy. You can go vegetarian. You can keep the beef out. You can just go onions, and you can play around with these pestos. For me, though, pasta and oil, a nice loaf of bread, that's all you really want, in my life at least. So salt, pepper on the beef, continue to let that go. Start breaking it up a little bit. A couple different kinds of pestos. I had a sun-dried pesto. I had a regular pesto. I also did get a jar sauce. I think the combination of three will really kind of give you that homemade taste. All right, while this beef's going, pull the onions aside. So one of the components to the noodle bowl is going to be tofu. You can cut tofu any way. You can really do whatever you want for tofu. If you want to get some flavor into it though, and also want to be able to get some color into it, we're going to do a quick saute on that. So I'm just going to cut it into little rectangles. I'm going to throw a little soy sauce on there just to kind of get some flavor in there. Not a lot. I'm just going to let it chill and hang out for a little while. All right. Wash my hands real quick. So as the beef's going, want to get color to it. And all this stuff is real time. I really didn't do anything ahead of time. All this stuff really, if you're hungry, come home from class or come home tired, really doesn't take much time at all. 15, 20 minutes from start to finish. You have the broth going. I have the onions, I have the ginger, I have the mushrooms. And again, that's all developing flavor. There's no salt, there's no anything else in that yet. You're going to get an incredible amount of flavor from these dried mushrooms. And we're going to actually use the mushrooms two ways into that noodle bowl. So as that beef's going, I'm going to throw the onions in there. I also did get this packaged fresh garlic. Time saver. It can be frozen. You can just cut these out individually as you need them. Ginger, garlic into that dish. You're going to let that go for a little bit, 5-10 minutes. You really want to get that color into the beef, and you also want those onions to break down, start turning color, clear, even caramelize a little bit. While this is all going on, I do have a nice big pot of water for the pasta when we're ready. So I'm going to throw a harvest carrot ginger soup into the stock. I'm going to actually use both of these. We're going to let that go. We ultimately want to get it to a boil. So. Anybody watching? Do we have anybody? We do. Let's ask it. You have the opportunity to ask any questions as we go. I don't always love to be able to only one talking, so if there are questions about anything on campus or food in general, love to hear them. Yeah, absolutely. I think we take a lot, as a program, as a campus, we take a ton of pride in how our product comes to our doors. And ultimately, as I stated, visiting these farms, visiting these families that provide us this food, whether it's animals, whether it's fruits, vegetables, cheeses, it definitely hit home when we visited these farms. It's just amazing how much pride and how they're, ultimately an extension of their family, how they're raised. it was an amazing, amazing experience that we did. Feels like a lifetime ago, but it was last year. And we continue to try to involve these people as much as possible in our program. Oh, salt, good question. You know, I'm not a big salt guy. I think salt is an important part of how we cook. I think a little goes a long way, but for me, I do salt in a series. So I don't salt all in the beginning or all at the end. I think if you layer your food in steps, so I did the beef, I did a little bit of salt. I did the onions, I did a little salt. I did not do any salt yet for the broth because the soup has salt in there, and I'm a big fan of kosher salt and flaky, yes. Sometimes if you have the small salt, you end up putting more than you need. Flaky doesn't stick as much. It's coarse, so you don't need, a little goes a long way with that stuff. So the bolognese sauce is going, the meat's breaking down, the onions are breaking down, the garlic's kind of incorporated in there. And obviously I could have cheated. I could have got a whole ton of basil or fresh thyme with it blowing up this dish, but you know, again, making it simple and easy. What's at the store that day and trying to come up with a meal, I think is a challenge sometimes, but you know, it's still gonna taste great. And we have the pestos, which will give us that fresh kind of fresh herb out of the garden kind of taste. And we use the jar sauce as just kind of an agent to the dish. There's nothing wrong with jar sauce, so just how you use it. Burners are a little slow to get going here. I'm gonna hit the pasta water now with a ton of salt. Because yes, this is where I'm gonna salt it. It doesn't stick, but it should taste like the sea. Your pasta doesn't have any flavor, so you want whatever's going in there to come out with some flavor. And I'll talk through my theory on pasta and how I approach pasta when it comes to sauce and plating and all that stuff when we're at that moment. So in the meantime, I do have the broth. I have the salted water going. Any more questions? Make this a lot less uncomfortable for me if we have some questions. All right. So the bolognese is coming. Now again, you can do whatever you want. So I like the sun-dried tomato, hole-in-the-wall pestos. I got the pesto one, just the regular basil pesto. I do have the jar sauce. I think for this kind of dish, I think a little of each three are gonna make this a really good dish. Yes, this is the only, because the question was, can I buy all these ingredients at Hillside? This is the only place I got these ingredients from. So everything you see on this counter is from Hillside. Some of it was frozen, so the garlic and the meat was frozen. That's why I got it yesterday to let it kind of thaw out and make it easier to use. Do I prefer cooking with tofu or tempeh? I prefer tofu. I think it's a little bit more flexible. I think you can do more to it than tempeh, but I think both has its own application. I think tofu is just a little bit more versatile and you can do a little bit more with it than tempeh, but I think they're both utilized pretty well. How do you get crispy tofu? Well, the easiest way is to fry it. So if you coat it, some people, so if I marinate, I have this marinating in soy sauce just to get flavor. If I wanted it crispy, which I do want crispy somewhat, but I would pat this dry. I would coat it in either cornstarch or rice flour, pat it dry and throw it in the fryer. That's the easiest way to get it crisp. For this one, I'm going to keep it in the soy sauce. I am going to pat it dry. I'm going to do it in the saute pan just to try to get it brown. It will definitely not get as crispy as a fryer, but it's a little bit more healthy. Is all the food at Hillside locally sourced? No, it's not. But we definitely taken a broader approach to make that. So we have a whole section of local within Hillside, from pestos to the dried mushrooms to some of the meats. We're getting better and better every year. We have some great partners that have expanded what they're offering, so it makes it a lot easier to buy local. But we do want to keep some of the favorites in there. So like your cereals, your chips, some of the name brands that you would expect to going in that store. I think we just have to keep that variety. But we're definitely making a conscious approach to make as much local as we can. But we also want the local products to sell too. We don't want them to sit on the shelf. So finding that balance has been what we're trying to do right now. Oh man, hidden gems. I found the hidden gems yesterday. So what are the hidden gems at Hillside? I think dried mushrooms are hidden gems. Dried mushrooms you can do so much with, and they can flavor so many different things, from broths to soups to stocks to sauces. You know, little things go a long way. I think I tried to find the hidden gems today. I think pestos too. Little goes a long way, but they incorporate so much flavor. And you know, a jar like this, for me, you don't want to put the whole jar. I think a couple spoonfuls, 4 portions is a long way. So little things that bring out flavor that you can do multiple things, I think are for me, hidden gems at least. Yeah, Ithaca hummus, that's part of our local strategy. So comment was, we love the Ithaca hummus. And that goes to our local strategy to really bring in local, because I do think local products are superior in a lot of ways. Some ways not, but most of the times they are. So I appreciate that comment. So our broth is going away. It's boiling. And again, that's a good thing when you have dried mushrooms, because that boil is going to get a lot of flavor. I'm going to let that go. So a lot of things with dried mushrooms too, I'm going to keep some of them in there for the whole run. And when they're in there, they're getting all their flavor out. So when you pull them out, you can absolutely eat them. They're edible, but I'm extracting all that flavor. So, you know, putting them in a bowl, noodle bowl, will, you know, they give some texture, but there's not a whole lot of flavor. So that's why I'm going to do the mushrooms 2 different ways. And I'll show you when I do the noodles, what that looks like. So what actually is kosher salt, and why do you prefer it? So kosher salt is a style of salt. It's kosher. I mean, it's been, you know, oversight. It is kosher, but kosher salt to me is, you know, there's a lot of different salts. So the iodized salt that's in that blue container has iodine in it, or iodine, whatever they, a chemical in there that prevents it from not clumping up. And it's a very strong salt. I think kosher salt or sea salt. Kosher salt is a clean flavor for me. Style of salt, but it's clean. It handles well when you're cooking. It doesn't stick together either, but it's easier to kind of sprinkle on your food. Sea salt, very similar, but it does clump a little bit, but it's got a whole different mineral taste to it. So for me, a sea salt is more of a finishing salt. So after I do one of these, the bolognese, if I wanted to finish something with salt, it would be a sea salt. Kosher salt is more of a cooking salt that you go throughout the process because it holds its flavor. A sea salt kind of goes away after you cook with it for a while. A few staples. I guess it depends on your. So if we only want to have a few staple items in our pantry to cook with, I guess part of it, you know, what would those ingredients be? You know, I think it depends on your style of cooking. For me, I'm Italian style. I love to cook Italian food. So for me, it's olive oil. It's some sort of canned tomato product or frozen tomato product, sun-dried tomatoes, some vinegars, some dried pasta. But it really depends on your style. I think versatility, so oils, vinegars, salt, some kind of protein if you're into that. But for me, it's pretty simplistic, but I really think it's important to, you know, whether it's, if you prefer Asian style cooking, it would be soy sauce, it would be ginger, it really depends on your kind of style of cooking. But pantry items, oil, vinegar, salt, sugar, some sort of rice or pasta, I think you can come up with a lot of dishes. So I'm just going to add a spoonful, or about a tablespoon each of the pestos. And I might finish the dish with it as well for the bolognese sauce. And I'm going to put some of the sauce in there, not a whole lot yet. See what that looks like. So one question is, and I'm going to show you in a second, is why is it important to cook or save pasta water? A lot of different reasons. So I'm going to use the pasta water in many different ways. So pasta water to me is very important because first you saw the salt I put in there. It's a flavor. It's a seawater broth right now. When we cook the pasta in there, some of the starch goes away out of the pasta and it goes in that pasta water. So there's tons of flavor in there. So the bolognese sauce right now is pretty tight. There's not a whole lot of tomato product or pesto in there. The pasta sauce helps create a finished sauce. So not only the flavor of the pasta, the flavor of the salt, but also the starch kind of brings everything together and brings another element of flavor to your sauce. And I'm not even going to strain the pasta when I cook it. I'm directly just going to pull the pasta, put it right in my pan. For me, pasta needs to be dressed many different ways. The sauce is part of it. For me, the pasta needs to be the star of the dish. So that is not the vessel, that's the star. So you want to flavor that the best you can. And I don't know how well you can see the sauce, but the pasta sauce is pretty tight. And I'm going to leave it like that way. And when we put some of that pasta sauce in there, or the pasta water, it's going to help bring everything together from that starch and some of that water. All right, so I'm going to let that pasta sauce hang out back here. Again, broth's going, pasta water's still going. So next step I'm going to do is get this tofu, and hopefully it's not going to stick to the pan, but it might, and we'll figure it out if it does. So cooking tofu, it was a question, tempeh tofu, and tofu when wet, or it's spongy, it absorbs, but it also has a lot of moisture in it. When you try to saute something or sear it, if it's wet, it's going to stick to the pan. I want to get some texture to this. I want to make it, because the noodle bowl is kind of soft on soft on soft, so I want some texture. But I put a lot of different crunchies in here, but again, I wanted to keep it true to what Hillside was offering at the time. So I'm going to pat this dry as much as I can. And ultimately, if I had a fryer, I'd be frying that as well. That was a question, hey, how to make tofu crispy. I would have absolutely fried it right now. But working with what we have right here. So the broth is cooking. And, one part of it too is you want to, especially with broths, you want to taste. I'm going to leave my mask on. But, you're going to get a lot of flavor. Like I said, dried mushrooms are one of my favorites. You can use it for so many different things. And it's such a boost of flavor, and it's such an easy thing to do, and you don't need a whole lot, and it goes a long way. So I'm not going to necessarily, or for our noodle bowl, I'm going to get ahead of myself, but for our noodle bowl, I'm using brown rice noodles. You can cook these, but rice noodles, if you cook them too much, they're going to disappear in you. So all I'm going to do is have them hang out in some hot water. Before I do that, though, I am going to put some of the dried mushrooms into that noodle water. These mushrooms are not going to hang out for long, so they're going to be part of the noodle bowl, and they're going to bring some more texture to it. But I am going to actually dip the brown rice noodles right into this mushroom kind of stock water. And these are gorgeous mushrooms. I mean, you have lobster mushrooms, you have shiitake mushrooms. It looks like we have some, it looks like porcini, but I don't know. But there's some great mushrooms, and again, all those stems and tops are going to bring an enormous amount of flavor. All right, wish me luck on this tofu here. We'll see what happens. Put a little bit of oil in the pan. You really want that pan not to be screaming hot, but you want it hot enough where if you're going to put cold and cold, so you're going to put a cold item in a cold pan, it's going to stick 100% on you. You want that pan to be hot, but not too hot where it's going to scorch it or burn it. You can tell that by, you can see the oil dancing. Just reading questions. So if I don't have mushrooms, what would be a good substitute? You know, give me a couple things. I think if you were to do soy sauce, you want kind of that, you show that sixth sense, that umami taste, you know, almost fermented a little bit. So I would say you can put some soy sauce into the broth. Trying to think of it. I think soy sauce would be my first choice. Even, and it depends too. If you want, I don't know, mushrooms probably a little bit more common, like a fish sauce or something like that, or oyster sauce. But soy sauce is pretty ready. But I would say a little bit of soy sauce in your broth, and then in your noodles, however you cook them. I think instead of putting the soy sauce into the water, I would dip my brown rice noodles into that. I would pull them out, and when I'm ready to serve, I would just toss those noodles in a little soy sauce. And I think you would definitely get a lot of flavor out of that application. All right, so I'm gonna put my tofu in here. Sizzle and noise is a good thing. Bubbles are also a good thing. So the tofu is already cooked. We just want to heat it through. I definitely want crispy. So my boiling water pasta. Bolognese looks great. Barilla Pasta, another local company in Avon. I know Barilla Pasta comes from Italy, but the factory is in Avon, New York. We were able to go there last year as well. Amazing operation, and if you're able to tour eventually, I think it's a well worth trip to go out and see what they do over there. Throw about half of it in there. So with pasta, you want boiling water, you want salted boiling water, and you want to turn that pasta as soon as it goes in there. Move it around as much as you can, because if you don't, it's going to stick. You want a lot of water, because it is starchy, and then there's not enough water, it's just going to be a whole starchy mess. And my tofu going, it's not sticking, that's a good thing. This is going. All right. Pull some of this stuff away. Water in there. Really crispy. Good thing. All right. So pasta, you know, usually the easiest way, how long do I cook it for? I usually follow the directions on the box, but for me, I usually cook it 1 to 2 minutes less than what the box says, and then I'm going to cook it the rest of the way in the sauce. A couple reasons we talked about the pasta sauce and the sauce, but also getting as much flavor in that main item of the dish. The pasta is a star all the time. Pasta to sauce ratio. What is a good ratio for pasta to sauce? I'm not a big fan of a lot of sauce in my pasta. Again, the pasta is a star. The sauce is the condiment. So when you treat it, when you use a condiment, you know, when you're dressing a burger with ketchup, it's just a little bit, but the burger's a star of that. Same with the pasta. You know, if I have, and when I plate, I'll show you, but if I have, you know, a bowl of pasta, my bowl, but, you know, a bowl of pasta like this, I'll show you. Actually, I'll answer that question when I plate it up. It's not much. You'd be surprised how little I put in there. It shouldn't be a soup. It shouldn't be swimming. You want to think, if you think that the pasta is a star and the sauce is just that condiment for your dish, I think it's an easy way to kind of go about how you plate your food. So from experience and growing up in an Italian household, I can tell when pasta's ready by just moving it around. I eat a lot of pasta, so got about 5 more minutes left on that. So kind of answer that question a little bit about pasta ratio. I'm actually taking at least half of the sauce off. I always can add more sauce back into it. Right now it almost looks like Sloppy Joe. And it's not Sloppy Joe because I do like my sauces really tight. And when we put some of that pasta water in there, it will resemble a bolognese sauce. All right, so the mushrooms are hanging out in that hot water. I'm going to turn that water off. And these noodles are going to cook real quick. The water's off. So you just really want to just damp them in there real quick and pull them right out. I'm going to actually wait. I'm going to make a mess. I'm going to wait 2 seconds for that. As you can see, the tofu, I don't know if you can tell, you can see that, but great crisp on there, and it's actually turned out great. And it's going to have that crunch to that noodle bowl. You know, obviously frying would have been okay, but you know, it would have got, you know, when it goes to frying, when you put something in a noodle bowl or soup, it gets soggy pretty quickly. So, you know, when I said I wanted, you know, frying would be the best application, but you know what, as soon as I hit that broth, it's going to turn to mush. One more minute on the pasta. I'm going to throw the brown rice noodles right into that hot water. Warm plate. Any more questions? Almost done plating when I was here. All right, so I have my sauce going on low heat. Pasta has got about 2 to 3 minutes before it's actually done. So I'm actually going to just throw it in the pan now. See that water is coming off of this. See the pasta looks almost raw at this point. But it won't in a couple minutes. And I think this is the best way to kind of treat that condiment piece because the pasta, again, star. We're going to cook it into the condiment now. I am going to keep that water going nice and hot because I will need more of that, but I just want to start cooking this pasta now into the sauce. You can see that it's almost a 80-20 ratio at this point from pasta to sauce. Real dry. Okay, because I'm going to let some of that moisture out. I am going to add a little bit of more water in there. Going to help that pasta loosen up a little bit. Can I share the recipes? Yes, I will. I will absolutely share them. I'll have to type them out, but yes, I will share them. Pretty straightforward, but yes. Do I put pepper in meat? Depends what kind of meat. If I'm making like a steak, yes, I do pepper in meat. As far as beef and any kind of, I season pretty aggressively when it comes to, if I'm cooking a steak or chicken, but that first piece when you sear it. I don't use a lot of black pepper when I'm making, you know, per se, like a sauce or something like that. I prefer like a chili flake, but I do a little bit. So noodles are still a little bit crunchy, but they're going to cook in this broth. I don't need a whole lot, but so I'm going to put some of the noodles in the bowl. I hear my pasta's cooking. So it's starting to get a little bit more cooked. See, it's all taking the color of the sauce. Still got about 1 more minute left. And we're gonna add a little bit more of that pasta water in there. That's why I keep it on here, keep it boiling. Because the pasta is absorbing that as it cooks. So with our noodle bowl, I have the brown rice noodles in there. I'm gonna start to clean it. So as I said with the stock, all those great flavors. I have the ginger, I have the mushrooms, I have the onions. I don't want that in my noodle bowl. So you can do a couple things, because I took all the flavor already out of these things. You can strain the whole thing. For this purpose, I have a little sieve that I'm going to use, and it's a noodle bowl. So the noodle for this one, the broth, it's the star. Got that great orange color from that carrot orange ginger soup. But you also have that tint from those mushrooms, that little brown tint. Cleaning it up. So I have that beautiful broth in there. I have these great mushrooms that were just hanging out with those noodles for a quick second. So they do have a lot of texture. They still have most of their flavor in there. And again, I could have cheated. I could have brought some scallions. I could have brought, some choy this year, put some green in there. But I wanted to keep this true to what we have at Hillside. And I still think you can make a phenomenal dish and have some great colors with some of the ingredients they have. We have our tofu that's nice and crispy. We have our noodle bowl. So for the pasta, I did buy some cheese. I do have extra sauce if we need it. So for me, I prefer a little bit of sauce, but absolutely, it really depends on preferences. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong. It's what you like to eat. So if you like a lot of sauce, then you eat a lot of sauce. I think there's no right or wrong way. I think food is how you like it and how you for me, it's a stress reliever. I like to eat when I'm stressed out. I like to eat lots of cookies, but pasta is kind of that relaxer for me, and it really makes me feel good, I guess. I don't know. It makes me enjoy life. So pasta. Sauce came together. You got beautiful color. The pasta looks great. It has some of those tints of the tomatoes, some of the pesto, the basil from the pesto, the sun-dried tomatoes. Star for me again. So you have your pasta. Give it a little twirl. You have this great sauce still in there. But again, I don't like a lot of sauce. And you can put as much or a little as you want on there. So we have this cheese. Do you like extra virgin olive oil a little bit? Another great ingredient is extra virgin olive oil. Lots of great flavor. It tastes differently when it's raw rather than cooked. Fruitiness, freshness. It's your pasta bolognese, all from Hillside Pod. So if there's no other questions, I had fun doing this. A little crazy, but for our first one, I think we did well. I think the dishes look phenomenal, and I appreciate everybody's time. Yeah. And happy to answer any last questions if anybody has them. Good. Well, thank you. I hope everybody has a great day, and I will be passing along these recipes. Hopefully by tomorrow afternoon, I'll get those out.